Today on Unpacked.
A few teachers came running and they helped me up. But this time it just felt different because it was not my leg. It was more of my entire body. They put me to sleep and I woke up the next day with a cast from my chest to my leg.
Basically, your whole body's in a cast. What did the doctors tell you?
But they told my grandmother that, okay, there's nothing we can do. I just remember psychologically asking myself, why? Why me?
Brittle Bones disease has its many challenges and restrictions, and today's guest is here to share her story. Let's unpack. Up until the age of 1, Thando Dibane's development as a baby was pretty normal until her mother started noticing a difference with her movement. It was at 12 years old that she was diagnosed with a disorder that revealed that she had brittle bones. Now, at 24, she is a tourism student and an overcomer who is facing life head-on. This is her story. Let's unpack. Nomthandazo, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, we actually would have loved to host you in studio, but there are actual physical restrictions as to why you're unable to travel. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
If I'm unable to come, it would definitely be the car that I ride in, the people available to help me, because I can't risk a fracture having anyone just pick me up without knowing how.
So let's go to the basic 101 of what brittle bones disease is, and maybe you can also share the medical term.
The medical term for it is osteogenesis imperfecta. It's caused by defective genes. These genes affect how the bones produce collagen, and this affects the strength of your bones. And brittle bone is basically just having weak bones. A small fall or a small bump can lead to this huge fracture.
So I understand that as a baby, your development was quite slow. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my development was quite slow in terms of crawling. I had a tough time crawling. I had a tough time sometimes just turning around, playing with other kids, just walking and trying to stand. Because kids that were the same age as me could do that and I couldn't.
So what are some of the things that your mother tells you about that time?
About the time, just that I was in a lot of pain and she didn't understand why. And because whenever she touched one of my legs, I would cry, but she couldn't understand why. But she constantly just told me that you were in a lot of pain.
So after your mother obviously sharing with you that there was a time in your life where you were struggling with development, what happened when other kids were walking, when you turned 1, when you turned 2? Were you eventually able to walk?
I was able to stand and I was able to walk with like seats and tables. That's where I was able to walk. But on my own, I could not walk at all.
And what did the doctors say when when they observed you?
When they observed me, they just said, it's just delayed development. They just kept on saying, delayed development. And this was from 1 up until 9.
Wow. So from 1 to 9, you were unable to walk on your own.
I was unable to walk on my own.
So at some point, you're put in a wheelchair and the doctors are still saying delayed development, which, isn't very, very much of an explanation for somebody who's 9 years old. And now you start going to school, and what happens?
With the wheelchair, that was my first wheelchair I received at 9. It was I didn't understand quite why, but I couldn't understand because it was always painful when I tried to stand. Going to school was quite fine. I went to a special school, actually. So I could see that there's someone in a wheelchair with me. I could identify with some of the learners. It was not as bad.
So did something specifically happen to you at 9 while you were in your wheelchair?
At 9, I had a few fractures, actually, because I remember my right shoulder having a fracture, and I had a fracture on my knee.
So what caused these fractures?
I don't think anything caused these fractures. I think I was just trying to play, because I used to play with Alton, throw the ball, then I would get hurt because my bones are not as strong as theirs.
But obviously at that time, your mother didn't know it was brittle bones. So what did the doctors and your mother think was actually going on?
The doctors suspected, they told my mother that, actually my grandmother, that this could be brittle bones. But I didn't have the complete symptoms of brittle bones. I just had the fractures because I was at a normal size. I could see, I could hear, I had no dislocations, so they could not just be like, this is brittle bones.
So what are these other symptoms that you didn't have that made them think that it might not be brittle bones?
I was not blind. I could hear properly. I had the correct height, and I had no visible dislocations that you could see.
So now you had a few fractures, and in terms of those fractures, did your body heal at a normal rate?
It heals quite quickly with brittle bones. They break fast, but they heal quite fast as well.
But are we talking about a break where you actually need to be in a cast?
Yes, when I'm in a cast, it heals quite fast.
So now fast forward to you being 12 years old. What was it that happened at that age?
At 12, I had the worst fracture of my life. The incident actually happened at school. On a Tuesday, I just went to school. It was just normal. I had fun up until break time. But I had break, and then the break was over. It was time to get in class. We lined up because I had trouble pushing myself. Some learners helped me. And one of my friends helped to push me. And then somehow I just fell. But the wheelchair came with me. It actually fell on top of me due to the safety belt. A few teachers came running and they helped me up. But this time it just felt different because it was not my legs. It was more of my entire body. My shoulders, my chest, my back, everything was just in pain. And this is where I went to the school clinic. At the school clinic, the nurse said if she fell, then she needs to go home or go to a hospital. They asked me and I said I need to go home first. We came home. My grandmother is at work, so we went to her workplace. At her workplace, they tell her, she fell. She fell, like, oh my, she fell. And then immediately she had this tantrum, like definitely in pain, like she needs to go to hospital. I think she already knew what happened because I fell. We get to the hospital, after a long wait, I get some help. They put me to sleep, but they didn't tell me yet what happened. Me and my grandmother knew nothing. They put me to sleep and I woke up the next day with a cast from my chest to my legs. Yeah, I had a broken ribs, broken back, cracked hips, 2 broken femurs, and 1 leg broken up until the ankle.
Yeah. All because of that one fall.
All because of that one fall.
So when you came to and you obviously woke up and you in basically your whole body's in a cast, what did the doctors tell you?
It was there and then where they actually told my grandmother and my parents that this is brittle bone. Like there's no way she can just have this one fall and have these many fractures. And I remember they told my grandmother that, okay, there's nothing we can do. They literally just said, there's nothing we can do. You guys just expect the worst. It's going to get worse. If she has a broken chest, she could probably have a broken neck the next time.
Wow. Yeah. So how was the recovery of that particular accident?
When I came home, I was in a lot of pain. But I actually was fine at home. The time when I took off the cast after a year was difficult because I had to learn how to sit, feed myself, bathe myself, and just move around, push myself a little bit. I even needed to learn how to write again.
And is that because your movements and your body was restricted for over a year?
Yes, because I was laying on my back for over a year.
Wow. Can you actually tell us a little bit about that time that you were in a cast for over a year?
My life in that cast, I was on the bed a lot, but my grandmother made sure that she moved me around, tried to put me up straight, take me to the bathroom, and just made sure that I don't get stiff.
Because obviously there are a lot of medical complications that can take place if you're literally just laying on your back. But this was happening at home. Did you have any medical support? Like if you were in a hospital, somebody would come in to do physio, make sure that you're not possibly getting blood clots and all those type of things. So how did that get managed at home for you?
They actually just taught my grandmother how to do it, like how to stretch me and how to turn me, how to feed me and how to bathe me. So they told her how to do it and she did it at home.
So what happened to school? Because at this time you're in about grade 7 or 8.
I was in grade 6 at the time.
Grade 6.
I was left behind because when I went back the next year, I was still in grade 6, but I had no problem to do it again.
So you weren't able to actually do schoolwork in the time that you were home?
I couldn't because I was in constant pain.
And in terms of the painkillers that they put you on, they didn't alleviate or help you with the pain?
The painkillers just help with pain for a few hours. I can, for a few hours, and after that, the pain is back.
Okay, so in this time, where was your mother actually? Because you speak a lot about your grandmother.
They were coming, both my parents were coming in and out, but because they had work, my grandmother had to do 90% of taking care of me.
Do you remember where you were emotionally and psychologically during that time?
I just remember psychologically asking myself, why? Why me? Why these fractures? Because I had them before 12, but they were not this bad. Because I had no life. I could not play. All I knew was to eat and sleep and watch TV.
And do you think that you got into any kind of depressive state at that time?
Not actually, because I think my family members, my cousins, they worked around me. They made sure that I always had someone to talk to. There was always someone around me. I don't ever remember a moment where I was alone.
And did your family and yourself have an understanding of the seriousness of what you were going through?
At the time, not really. No.
So let's fast forward. Now you've recovered. You come out the cast. And I still don't really understand, with a year being in a cast, how come you had to learn to write again and learn to do so many things? Was there other damage done to your body physically that required you to relearn those things?
My right hand actually had a crack, but they said they're not going to put a cast on it. So the whole time it was pretty much numb because I couldn't move it. It had a crack, but it was no cast, but just a bandage. So it became weak and I couldn't use it. That's why I said I had to learn to write again.
What was the reason that they didn't put that in a cast?
They gave my grandmother and I the options of, because it's dislocated. They said it's dislocated with a crack. Either we operate on it and we fix it and put the cast, or we just put the bandage and it heals as it is. And my grandmother and I said, let it heal as it is.
Okay, so now you go through that process of relearning to do a few things again. What was that journey like and how long did it take?
It took me a few months, about 4 months. 4 months, because I had help at home and at school.
And what did that journey include?
A lot of people, a lot of time spent on me. Just every day practicing. Okay, now let's push yourself. I pushed myself 3-4 times. I learned how to sit again because even at school, I would just be in a class and be like, I can't sit anymore. And I just had to go to the physio to get on the bed. So they just taught me, yeah.
So what did the doctors say now? Because at some point you have to go back to real life, which is going to school. What did they say about how to prevent further injuries?
The doctor said they recommend physio, however, minimize movement. They said minimize movement. Yes.
But what did they recommend in terms of how you need to live your day-to-day life so that you don't get hurt?
My day-to-day life, they just said he just doesn't need to go anywhere else. Just let it be school and home, like that. They cut off going to the mall, going to the movies, even visiting a friend next door.
And that was because of?
Because of the severeness of the fracture. Like me just getting out of the yard and someone accidentally bumping into me, I could be right back in that car.
I get you. So now what was the next thing that happened in your life? Because that was when you were 12.
From 12 up until 19, I had a few fractures, but they were not as bad. I think the worst one was I fell again actually when I was 19 in grade 11. At that time I was staying at the hostel, and my grandmother decided to send me to a hostel so I can just be physically independent. Because at home everyone was doing everything for me. It went well. I was there for 6 months, and then that day I fell, but this time I had no safety belt. So I fell by myself, and the wheelchair didn't come along. I first broke my right femur. I went to the hospital and they said, okay, right femur broken. Put a cast on it, actually a brace on it, and sent me home, and then said, this will heal after 4 weeks. While I'm at home, because I have a fracture now, moving around became difficult. So my other leg took the strain that this leg couldn't take. And then I broke my second femur while at home.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I had 2 broken femurs that time.
When you have these fractures, are you aware that your bone is actually breaking? Because the way you speak of it is like me bumping a table and just getting a bruise.
I am aware. I'm fully aware. Like the moment I feel there's just this shocking pain. But it lasts about 10 seconds, and it burns almost, and then I know, but this is the fracture for sure.
Do you ever hear your bone breaking?
No, never. I've never.
So you went through a couple of fractures up until the age of 19, where you then had your next big incident and eventually had both femurs broken. And in this period, I mean, you are living in a wheelchair already, but what other restrictions did you have on your life?
I was part of the debate team that year that was going to Johannesburg. There was a camp. The camp was in Kimberley, luckily. I attended with both my femur broken. As I attended, because I was taking blood clot medication, as it was time to leave, the nurse appointed to help me physically in Joburg, she did some research and asked the doctors, my doctor specifically, and the doctor said, because she's taking this medication, as soon as she goes on that plane, she will have a heart attack. She needs to stay. Yeah. So it restricted me from participating in the debate.
Why did they say it would give you a heart attack? What could have happened?
They didn't really explain, but the nurse just said she won't be responsible if I go on the plane, because the doctor said if she is taking these kinds of medication, she cannot get on a plane.
Okay, so you were excluded now from participating. What ended up happening with your schooling for that year? Because that was your final year.
Yes, it was actually in the finals. I was in grade 11. I came home very sad that I couldn't come along with the group. I came home and I healed emotionally, physically, spiritually. I just wrote my finals. I didn't go back for the third term. I just went back the last term, the fourth term, and just wrote my exam.
And then how was your matric year?
My matric year, surprisingly, was quite well. I had no breaks throughout.
And is that because you became extra careful with your movements and your belt on your wheelchair? What are the things that you did do to make sure that you weren't having any more fractures?
I would stay away from crowds. I wouldn't go outside a lot because it seems to me like outside, every time I'm outside, I just had a fall. And I didn't have the safety belt. I felt like the safety belt was a danger also to me, so I don't have a safety belt anymore. I took some supplements to help with bone strengthening, the physio and constant treatment, like that.
So what is the treatment that they put you on for brittle bones? Or is it supplements? Is it a certain type of medication?
Supplements you buy yourself. I do have quite like calcium supplements I have, but I also am taking medication from the hospital. It's called Zomita. I take it twice a year through a drip.
And what is the purpose of that particular medication?
It helps with bone strengthening. It strengthens the bones.
But in terms of, clearly there isn't a cure for what it is that you're going through. But in terms of maintaining and improving your situation, is that the only medication that's available to you?
That's the only medication that's available to me. And physio. Physio is the best right now.
So what does the physio do to help you? Is it that it improves the muscle strength to better support your bones?
Yes. Also to teach me how to move around by myself. She does stretches. puts me in certain positions so that if I ever do get in that position, I don't have a fracture.
Has physio ever caused a fracture?
Yes, actually, yes.
What
It
happened?
has, on my knee. On my knee, because I needed a lot of help. So she picked me up and put me on the bed, but my knees were not straight. And then she tried to literally just straighten one of them, and then as she straightened, one of them just broke.
Yo, that is so serious. So what happened? Did you need a cast when you broke your knee?
They actually did apply a cast, but it didn't take long. 2 weeks after that, I was fine.
And how did the physio feel?
I don't know, but I didn't make it her fault. I don't think it's her fault. I have brittle bone at the end of the day.
Yes. So now between the physio and all of that you went through, were you able to complete your matric and be fine for the remainder of that school year?
Yes, I was able to finish matric, and I was fine for the full year up until the next year.
So what was next in your life?
Next was definitely studying, which was a little bit delayed because I had a fracture. I had actually the fracture right after my matric. I had 2 broken legs.
And what happened after that?
I healed and I stayed home a little bit because they took a long time to heal.
What was it about this particular fracture that took so long to heal?
It kept repeating itself. It just kept repeating itself. As soon as it's supposed to heal, there's a new one right on that bone.
Oh, as in like the same area gets fractured or broken?
The same area I could have like 3 cracks and they would heal and there would be another 2 cracks.
So does this mean you're constantly getting x-rays done?
Right now, it's been quite some time, it's been 2 years. But I had constantly x-rays to a point where they actually suspected cancer.
Wow. And what kind of cancer were they suspecting?
They never told us. I just went for tests and they said there are no cancer cells, so she's fine.
So where are you today?
Today, I'm at home studying online.
And what is the kind of life that you live?
I could say today it's better today because I can do 90% of the things for myself. I push myself, I help myself, I cook, I clean. I've definitely gotten a bit stronger.
So what is it that you're studying at the moment?
At the moment, I'm studying tourism.
And what do you hope to do with your qualification?
I have a lot of plans, including traveling, if I have a job now, traveling. And also, I've been watching a lot of Miss SA. I wanted to actually enter. I'm still doing research around it. Because there hasn't been a Miss South Africa that I can identify myself with. I have disabled friends and we just cannot relate to any Miss SA.
So you want to break those ceilings of, how beauty is viewed in the perspective of pageants.
In the perspective of pageants. A lot of things have stopped me from going, There are stairs, the gowns are way too huge, a lot of things, The friendliness of the show.
What are some of the other dreams that you have for yourself?
Myself, I would like to be on TV, have a reality show where I can just show people that, where I say there's a stereotype that a disabled person is so dependent on other people, physically, we have to do everything for them. So I would just like a platform to show that, I can do a lot of things for myself.
And what did the doctors ever say? Because, we spoke about the time that you were learning to walk and stand for yourself. What did the doctors ever say about the prospects of you ever being able to walk?
They just told my grandmother that I won't be able to walk. And, for some time, I had a tough time dealing with it, and she had a tough time dealing with it too. There was a time where we couldn't just accept it.
So what did you do about it at the time in the not accepting? Were you trying to walk?
I was trying to walk, but my grandmother believed, it must have been something spiritual. So I was going from pastor to pastor, prophet to prophet, so she can just see or heal or just help. So someone can just help with walking and all this pain.
And what did some of the pastors and prophets actually say?
Some of them gave us false hope, but there were some of them that said, the pain will get better, but walking is definitely not in her life. Like, I'm not going to walk, but there's going to be a time where I get better and I don't go to hospital as much and I don't have as much pain.
And what do you believe about your abilities? I'm not even going to say restrictions, but how far your abilities can take you?
I believe they can take me very far. You know, right now, the only problem I have is my legs, but I believe they can take me very far if I'm up for it.
You know, you speak a little bit about wanting to travel. Is that restriction still on you of things like getting on a flight?
No, right now it's not, unless I have a fracture, but it's not.
So you can fly?
I can fly.
Do you think that South Africa is geared up for a person in a wheelchair like yourself that wants to be able to travel freely?
I don't think so, actually, because I have been at, you know, where I went to the school and we were at the station, but it just seemed, it was friendly to a certain extent. There were some places and some things I could not see that other learners saw because I was just in a wheelchair. It was just not, some things were not accommodating. The space and, you know.
What would you like viewers to know about brittle bones disease and your journey?
I would like them to know that there is life with brittle bones. You know, it does get hard and it is painful, but there is life with brittle bones and we live our life to the fullest.
And you live your life very independently, like you've already said.
Yes, I live my life very independently, but I don't live alone though.
Have the doctors ever said if age is going to make it worse? Because, of course, aging, the bones naturally deteriorate.
They have not said that. One thing they said is they gave me a life expectancy when I was about 14, because they said not many children with brittle bones make it up to the age of 15.
Wow.
So kind of like that time, yeah. That time I was just awaiting their effect.
Well, you're 24 years old now, so you did prove them wrong.
Yes, I did prove them wrong.
And I'm assuming that you're not living your life with the mentality of there's a cutoff point anytime soon.
No, as soon as I was 18, I was like, okay, it's not going to happen. I'm going to die when I'm supposed to die. So I don't live my life like that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story of hope. And I think you have been through so much. How many fractures in total have you been able to count?
My goodness, I think it's about 100 and something.
That is crazy. That is so crazy. I mean, I think about the fact that in my life, I have not had a single fracture.
And I've had 100 and over 100.
And you survived and gone through all of that pain. Thank you so much for sharing your message of hope. Your life is a testimony of the fact that, hey, the doctor said you might not make it past 15 and now you're 24, but also that you're choosing to actively live your life to the fullest without any restrictions. It is so great to hear about your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hashtag Unpacked with Relebogile. Let us know your thoughts on today's conversation. And yeah, some of these stories really tug at the heartstrings because we take for granted the things that we have access to, like moving freely. Brittle bone disease, I didn't know much about it until this conversation, and I'm so glad that it happened. I hope that you are also equally inspired. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked.
But this is not the way to Johannesburg. He said, I have a code 14, two code 10s. And then he told us no one is going anywhere. I just jumped. I didn't have a plan. The only thing on my mind was getting out of there alive. I'm certain that it is human trafficking because that is how they describe your physique. Maybe we could have been in a country that we don't know and we were not going to get help at all.
Thank you so much for watching Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. Make sure you subscribe to my channel where you can get to watch more episodes. But more importantly, you can be part of our online community. Comment down below, share with us who you'd like to see on the show, or what story you'd like us to discuss. We love engaging with you. Keep it coming and don't forget to subscribe.